Okay, so this happened when I was 13. I was with my parents at some shop in a big mall in my city. We were looking for some clothes for one of my cousin's birthdays. My parents eventually told me I could go look for some clothes by myself since I wasn't really helping them that much. Well, I went to go take a look at some other clothes for me because I was quite tired of the clothes I was used to wearing at the time. I don't even know what my parameters were to choose clothes, but I just found them a little bit tiresome. As I was looking though, I couldn't really find anything that I liked, so I went to my parents who were already paying for all of the things they'd gotten. I asked if I could go take a walk in the mall, while they would go get some coffee at a nearby coffee shop in the same mall. The coffee shop was on a different floor though. They agreed, and I went to another clothing store to look for some stuff for me. At some point though, this random guy who looked like he was clearly in his late 50s or so walked up and started asking me questions when I was just minding my own business. Hey, are you here alone? Are your parents nearby? I first thought those questions were maybe because he wanted to make sure I was safe since I might have looked like a lost child. Fortunately though, my parents raised me with a very important rule, which was, if anyone you don't know comes up to you and talks to you, give vague answers and come back to us ASAP. So, that's exactly what I did. Yeah, they're nearby. I tried to leave the shop, but instead the man gripped my arm tight. When that happened, I froze. I thought I was about to be kidnapped by some stranger, and for some reason, instead of trying to run, I thought it would be best to just cooperate with what he was trying to do. He grabbed me and we left the shop together. We were going down toward the downstairs floor of the mall, which I was hoping to be the coffee shop floor. It was, so luckily the coffee shop was literally situated right in front of the stairs. My parents were right there. It turned out they weren't directly looking at me though. When we got onto that floor, I broke out of his grip and ran straight to the coffee shop and asked the waitress where Tom and Amelia were. She told me where they were seated. Meanwhile, the dude was sprinting to catch up to me. When I finally reached my parents, they asked what had happened and why I looked so scared. The dude then showed up right behind me. This fucking dude. He even tried to pretend he knew me. In a complete panic, I yelped out to my parents that I didn't know him at all and he was definitely chasing me. I just hoped they would believe me. My mom tried to call the police right away. While my dad was so pissed off, I thought he would immediately beat the shit out of that man right then and there. But while my mom tried to call the police, the man sprinted directly away. Since we were in the first floor, he went straight into the parking lot, entered his car, and drove away at full speed. Thanks to that creepy dude, I still have a fear of getting questions from people I don't know anything about. This happened in 2019, but is still in the back of my mind. At the time, I worked at Chick-fil-A. That night, I was supposed to close, but I left at around 8 p.m.-ish. I already knew at this point I was going to be spending about 30 to 45 minutes driving around to my usual Pokemon stops. At 8 p.m. on a Wednesday, there were some cars on the roads, but not very many. It was a smaller town with very little police presence and not much crime happened here either. I'd done this before many times, so I knew which spots to go to. I was driving to all of the spots I knew and could reach from inside my car. I had also just gotten off work from standing and being busy literally all day, so I wasn't about to go walking around a whole bunch when it was dark out anyways. The places I knew also had little to no cars at them. For the first stop, I pulled into the parking lot by the high school field. I spun the stops and clicked on a few Pokemon. I then got ready to pull onto the residential street. I was just kind of sitting there at the stop sign for a bit with no cars behind me. It's not exactly like I was in a hurry or anything. Turned on my blinker, then I turned left onto the street. Immediately, I saw two cars in front of me, an older white SUV and a sedan in front of that one. They were about 4 blocks up ahead. I noticed the SUV was not really situated in its lane. Instead, it was driving in the middle of the road like it wanted to pass the sedan by. It definitely could have done so. The road was extremely wide and there were no oncoming cars either. I was glancing down at my phone in the cup holder, trying not to go very fast. I kinda wanted walking points. Then I noticed the white SUV that was driving in the middle of the road was driving really slowly on the shoulder of the road now. Maybe they'd noticed me and were wondering what I was doing. Maybe me driving so slowly was weirding them out. I clicked my phone shut and started to drive normally now. I was nearly behind the SUV when it sped up quite quickly and took a hard right turn onto a street. I saw the SUV pull into a driveway. As I was passing that side street by, I saw the SUV turn into reverse and now back out of that same driveway. I was behind the other sedan now, at a four-way stop. In my rearview mirror, the white SUV was turning back onto the street and was now going to be behind me. The sedan waits its turn at the four-way stop, then turns left. I wait my turn and then go straight. I watch to see if the SUV goes straight too. It does. The SUV had to wait its turn at the four-way stop, so I was a good 4 to 6 blocks ahead on this residential street. I wanted to lose this car, so I was going about 30 miles per hour when the speed limit was about 20 or so. I turned in behind the Church Strip Mall. The church had a playground behind it as well, but it was pretty much almost an alleyway. I lost the SUV in that alley. I stopped there waiting, looking in my side mirror. Sure enough, the white SUV comes barreling down the street. It almost passed me right by since it was going so fast, but eventually they did spot me, and it turned into the alley where I was parked, coming right toward my car. Obviously, I was freaked out at this point. This alley was very dark and there were no streetlights at all. The stores in the strip mall were all abandoned, and the church was on the other side. It was well lit though, so I wanted to at least go there. I sped down the alley and around the building, the SUV following right along. I turned around and couldn't see them in my rearview mirror anymore. I stopped my car and parked right in front of the well-lit church doors, basically parked right in the fire lane. I was watching my rearview mirror waiting for this car to come find me. I knew it was back there and I knew it was going to drive around me too. They'd see it was all just a misunderstanding. The SUV was there. It peeked around the building corner. They stopped and waited a bit before turning towards where I was parked. It slowly drives by my car. They passed me by at a snail's pace and I did my best not to look at them. From my peripheral vision, I could see one outline in the driver's seat though. As they passed me, I could feel this person's eyes set into me and could see their head turning. I was uncomfortable, but I didn't want to acknowledge them, so I didn't roll down my windows. I didn't want to look at them either. I just wanted to ignore them and hopefully they'd see I'm probably not who they thought I was. They passed me completely, and the SUV started to drive toward the exit of the parking lot. Then it started to circle around again, making these big loops around the empty church lot. My body started to fill with dread. I was actually quite scared now. I'd given them the benefit of the doubt at first, but now they kept coming back around. I had no idea what they could possibly want from me. When they started up another circle back around, I took the chance to take off out of that parking lot. They followed right behind me. My car bottomed out and I sped down the street. So did theirs. The police station was way out near the countryside on the outskirts of town. But there was a police annex on this street. Sometimes there would be cop cars parked out front. My plan was to just park there and if they were still following me to call 911. Well, they were 100% still following me. They took every turn I did, sped up when I did, and as I turned my blinker to take a right, they turned left. They were gone. I told my friends and family about this quickly after. No one I knew drove that kind of car. It was also an older model, so I don't think it could have been a rental. I don't know anyone who would try to do this to me and think it was funny. I did make a police report in the end, but since I didn't get a license plate, they couldn't really do anything. I also know what kind of car it was. I would notice an older SUV for months after, but I never saw that same exact car again. Hi there, I'm 16 years old. I live in Morocco and just lived through a creepy event, so I'm excited to be able to share it here. Anyway, here's the story. I live in an apartment with my family, and I'm in a period where I need to focus for my final exams. Today, as usual, I was sick, so I didn't end up going to school. I used this free time to practice more for the upcoming tests. And at approximately 8 p.m., my father called me and suggested to me a car ride in order to spend some time with each other. My parents are divorced, so when I'm with my mother, I see him less often than I do her. I took the opportunity to be with my father for like 30 minutes or so, which was pretty nice. We arrived in front of the building where I live with my mother. I said goodbye to him and started walking towards it. I pushed the button of the intercom so that my mother opened the door, and I saw a food deliverer with his motorcycle parked just right next to me. Here comes the problem. I thought he was going to deliver something to a neighbor. Nothing unusual here, but I noticed that something was off. Firstly, usually deliverers in Morocco, I don't know if this is the case in other countries as well, have like a box where they store the food in order to keep it warm. This guy didn't have one though. He was holding the bag of food with his hand while riding the motorcycle. Also, he opened his phone like he was going to check a delivering app. But as I said, he didn't have the box or logo of a delivering service or anything like that anywhere on him. Even if my mother unlocked the door, I preferred not to open and talk to the guy. I order from restaurants and fast food a lot. I'm used to seeing deliverers and even chat up with them a bit to try and make them laugh. I mean, I know it's a hard job because of people being jerks, so I try to be as friendly as possible. I decided to give this guy a chance. I started by saying, "Hi, and how are you, bro?" in Moroccan. The guy was actually super nice. He had a great smile and a nice way of talking, but he kept taking long periods of time before answering me, almost like he was lagging or something. It's okay, I guess. It happens. Maybe he was stressed or preoccupied and had something to worry about. I asked him what door number it was he was delivering to. He replied 42, which was quite odd because the last door of the building was the 14th. I told him to check his app once more, then tried to watch his phone slyly, even though I was not next to him. Instead of opening a delivering app, I noticed he opened WhatsApp and didn't even open a chat. He then said door 11 immediately. At this moment, I definitely knew something was wrong, because I live at the 12th door. The 11th door was right next to me, and I'm sure that my neighbors weren't the ones to order, because they were on vacation. I started to get a little bit stressed out, and told him that this must be an error because of the reason I just told you. He insisted he had to go in though, and told me he used to deliver at this address, and he knew where he needed to go. He also told me the customer knew him well, and asked him to be quick because he liked his food to be as hot as possible. I clearly told him at this point that I could not let him enter that building, but I was going to check if the guys on the 11th door were back from their trip. If so, I would let them know that he was there waiting for them. I also told him that the guard of the building was usually in the cafe next by, and that he could go talk to him as well. I also told a little bit of a lie and told him my dad was waiting for me, and I needed to go for a sec. He was angry at first, but immediately changed his attitude and became false friendly again. I asked him to step away, then asked my mother to unlock the door and entered. I was still nervous. While I was walking toward the elevator, I suddenly got really scared because I noticed that I never heard the sound of the door closing behind. I felt so dumb. I knew I should have closed it myself, but in the moment I didn't think about it. I was sure he was now entering the building. Immediately, I started running toward the staircase. At that same time, he tried to throw the bag he was holding at me. I don't know why, but thankfully he missed. At this moment, I started thinking really quickly. I have Crohn's disease, which is to be short a disease that causes inflammation of the intestines and severe pain. But according to my doctor, it also explains why I'm so anxious and why I think too much. And so, I'd already thought in the past of a scenario where I'd need to hide from someone in the building. I came to the conclusion that the underground parking garage would be the best place. It was really large due to the fact that it was shared by 4 buildings. So I ran toward the staircase and immediately started running downstairs towards it. Before I continue, I need to say I'm a pretty tall guy, about 6'3", so it's difficult for me to try and hide quickly. As I continue running, I can hear him chasing behind me. At this moment, I remembered that the other buildings had their own doors to the parking lot as well, so I ran towards one of them. I saw someone from afar and started screaming to call the caretaker quickly. He didn't react though, and entered one of the doors. I sprinted up the stairs and opened the door of the building and entered a bakery just next to it. Luckily, I found the caretaker and explained to him quickly what was happening. He immediately shot out of the bakery and started chasing the man, but he was too far away and already running towards his motorcycle, so he couldn't catch him in the end. I was really tired from all that running, but strangely, I wasn't really shocked at all. Actually, while writing this, I still feel a bit excited about what happened. I don't know if that's weird. I'm definitely not going to tell my parents though, because otherwise they'll forbid me to go out alone or take a taxi. I tried to look for the bag that he tried to throw at me to see what was in it, but when I went back it wasn't there anymore. I know I'm a bit selfish for not calling the police, but I prefer not to worry about it because I know they'll never do anything. I got off work at around 11 p.m. The sad part about this is, I volunteered to work this shift. If I had never offered, I would have never experienced this. This particular apartment is on my college campus. My campus is an open campus, which means that anyone can enter at any time. As a female, I guess that's pretty unnerving. However, I always carried a pocket knife and pepper spray. I usually had to park pretty far away from my apartment since most parking spots were filled. I finally found one eventually, but thank God I checked my surroundings before I got out. I noticed there was a fairly tall, grimy, old man standing about 50 feet away from me. This sent chills down my spine because he stood so still, he almost looked like a mannequin. I could see his bloodshot eyes, which were wide open. Now I definitely knew I was not getting out of that car, but what the man yelled to me made my heart pound out of my chest. "Come here, pretty girl," he said with a slight creepy grin on his face. I don't know why I did this, but I shot the bird at him, probably because I had a feeling he was a pervert. I put my car in reverse and backed out of the spot, keeping my eyes on this man. My heart pounded even harder when he started speed walking towards me. He was about 10 feet away from my car when I finally put it in drive and stomped on the pedal. I literally drove to the other side of the apartments and panicked. I called my roommate and best friend and told her what had just happened. I asked her to wait for me at the door and stay on the phone with me. I parked the car for about 5 minutes to calm myself down. I kept looking around as well to see if the man had tried to follow me. It turned out he was nowhere to be seen. I didn't want to get out of my car, however, I did have to get into my apartment somehow. I parked in a spot where it wasn't too far away anymore and decided to book it towards my room. I had my best friend on FaceTime the entire time I sprinted. I flew down 2 flights of stairs until I was only about 100 feet away from my door. I could even see my best friend waving at me. A feeling of relief came over me, only for a few seconds. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever seen that movie Get Out, but just picture a grown-ass man sprinting towards you. That's exactly what happened. This man just took off running towards me, but this time he looked pissed off. It was like a scene straight from a horror movie. I don't even know how he found me. I don't know what his problem was either, but I bet he could have broken the national record for the 40-meter dash. I darted toward my door. Thankfully, I reached it just in time. Right when my best friend and I slammed the door closed, the man's fingers got stuck in the crack. He screamed and tried to shove the door open, but my best friend and I slammed it on his fingers again. That happened about a year ago. My best friend and I never spoke on it, ever. I never saw the man again either. I also never volunteered to work another night shift. I never worked another night shift period. And I never shot the bird at anyone else either.